You're not going to believe what I just got my hands on. This was a PC disguised as a GPU. Yeah, you heard that right. It completely breaks every rule of what a normal PC should look like. And I'm willing to bet most of you watching have never even heard of this thing before. Even some of the oldest tech YouTubers probably wouldn't recognize it. Honestly, I don't even know how to describe it properly. There's no brand name, no model number, nothing written on it. But here's the crazy part. It's not actually a graphics card. Take a look. It's got a laptop-style RAM stick, 2 USB ports, a LAN port, and a 6-pin power connector. There's even a PCIe slot, an mSATA port, a SATA connector for drives, a CMOS battery too. Before we dive deeper into what this thing really is or how it works, let's do the most important test first. Let's power it on and see if it still works. I'm going to use my old SSD as the boot drive for Windows. On the first startup, nothing. Totally silent. No fan spin, no LEDs, no sign of life. At that moment, I honestly started to panic a bit. Most of the parts in this build are ancient, and I didn't have any spares to swap or test with. After a few minutes of troubleshooting, I finally found the culprit, the CMOS battery. It was completely dead. I swapped in a new one, hit the power button again, and everything came back to life perfectly. Once I got into Windows, I opened CPU-Z to check the specs. The CPU is an Intel Core i3-2330i from the old Sandy Bridge era, a 2-core, 4-thread chip that sips power at just 35 watts. That's insanely efficient, even by today's standards, but it's paired with just a single 4GB stick of DDR3 RAM, which, let's be honest, is pretty cramped for anything modern. Before testing performance, I wanted to give this thing some love, so I removed the cooler, cleaned it up, and reapplied thermal paste. The motherboard uses an RPGA989 socket, which might look familiar. It's a pin-style socket, kind of like what AMD's used for years, but it's not a copy. Back between 2007 and 2012, laptops needed flexibility. OEMs wanted to easily swap CPUs between different models without redesigning the entire motherboard. So why not use the LGA style like desktop chips? Well, LGA needs a metal retention bracket and a much sturdier PCB, which would have made thin laptop boards bend or crack. That's why Intel stuck with the pin grid layout for mobile CPUs back then. Simple, compact, and reliable. This right here is called the IC847 Plus, and it's not your average motherboard. This thing was built specifically for crypto mining during the big boom between 2017 and 2021. Everything about it screams efficiency over luxury. It's got a cheap built-in CPU, a ton of PCIe slots so you can hook up 6 to 8 GPUs, and just enough RAM and components to keep it running 24/7 without crashing. No fancy RGB, no gaming features, just pure functionality. The whole design is focused on stability and cost efficiency for medium and large mining farms. That's why it's not something you'd ever want for gaming or office use. It's a mining workhorse, not a desktop motherboard. These boards were mostly made in China, where entire factories pumped them out for the crypto market. And now that the crypto bubbles burst, they're flooding secondhand stores and eBay listings everywhere. You can actually grab a combo with the IC847 Plus and its built-in CPU for around $50, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Let's see what this little PC can still handle here in 2025. For everyday stuff, browsing the web, reading news, typing documents, it's totally fine. Smooth, no hiccups at all. But when it comes to video playback, that's where things start to get interesting. On YouTube at 480p, it's surprisingly watchable. The colors look good, motion is smooth, though the CPU is already working at around 40% just to keep up. Once I bump it up to 720p, things go downhill fast. The video starts pausing constantly to buffer, and you can clearly see stutters and frame skips. The CPU is maxed out at 100%. Struggling just to hold that resolution. And then I pushed it even further, 1080p. At this point, it completely gives up. The video lags, freezes, and the whole system starts choking. Watching YouTube in full HD has officially become a stress test. So that's web and video playback. Let's jump into Serious Sam 2, first-person shooter that came out all the way back in 2005. Yeah, it's actually older than some of you watching this video. For a nearly 20-year-old game, the graphics still hold up surprisingly well. I'm running it at HD resolution with medium settings, and the gameplay feels super smooth. No frame drops, no stutters, nothing that breaks immersion. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the in-game FPS counter to show up, but judging by how it feels on screen, I'd say it's running somewhere around 40 to 50 frames per second. Not bad at all for hardware this ancient. Next up, we've got Left 4 Dead, running at HD resolution with low settings. And honestly, the game runs smoother than I expected. We're hovering around 35 to 50 FPS, which is totally playable for a title like this. What's really interesting though is how hot the CPU gets. We're talking around 80 degrees Celsius, which is pretty wild for this old chip. But here's the cool part. This CPU is actually pushing out double the FPS compared to the GT210 I tested earlier. Not bad for a 14-year-old processor, right? Even with tons of zombies and explosions happening on screen, it's holding up surprisingly well, totally playable for some nostalgic runs with friends. Next up, I decided to try something a bit lighter. Half-Life. I'm running it at a resolution that's roughly 2.5 times lower than full HD, and honestly, the results are great. The FPS stays high, averaging around 70 frames per second, and at times it even spikes past 100 FPS. The best part is how stable it feels. No sudden drops or lag spikes at all. Meanwhile, the CPU is barely breaking a sweat, hovering around 50 to 60% usage, and the power consumption is insanely low, only about 18 watts. That's basically sipping electricity while still keeping the game smooth and super playable. Not bad for such an old setup. I also tried something a little different, a classic 2D title from the land of the rising sun, Mega Man X4, first released all the way back in 1997. Now, you'd think a 2D game from the 90s would be easy to run, right? Well, not exactly. For some reason, this game actually eats up more resources than I expected. When I tried running it with my FPS monitoring software turned on, it completely tanked. I'm talking 1 frame per second. Literally unplayable. But here's the weird part. Once I turned the monitoring software off, everything suddenly ran smoothly. Even with explosions and action on screen, the gameplay was way more stable. So yeah, sometimes the real bottleneck isn't the hardware, it's the software you're running alongside it. Next up, I fired up a true classic, Plants vs. Zombies, one of the most beloved games of all time. It's that perfect mix of strategy, humor, and pure chill fun that never gets old. And honestly, this little PC had no trouble running it at all. The game held a steady 27 frames per second, with the CPU hovering around 30% usage, which is actually pretty good for something this old. So yeah, if you're into 2D casual games or just want to relive some nostalgic titles, this machine can still handle them smoothly and reliably, even here in 2025. The last game honestly blew my mind. Minecraft. With settings on fast render distance at just 2 chunks and all effects turned off, this tiny setup still managed to hit around 20 to 30 FPS. Sure, that's not buttery smooth, but for a modern game running on a 14-year-old CPU with no dedicated GPU, that's actually impressive. I honestly thought it wouldn't even launch. The only downside? Heat. The CPU shot up to around 70 degrees Celsius, which makes sense considering this thing's cooled by a single small fan. It's not just the CPU struggling either when the 4 gigabytes of RAM is getting completely maxed out, sitting around 3.7 gigabytes while the system fights to keep up. If you swap that out for an 8 gigabyte stick, you definitely see a noticeable bump in FPS. And just for fun, I did something pretty dumb. I plugged this board into a regular desktop PC to see if FPS would improve. But nope, still the same. That's when it hit me. Even though it looks like a GPU, this thing actually behaves like a standalone mini PC, not a graphics card. So, as you've just seen, this thing is one weird little PC, definitely not something you come across every day. It was never meant for gaming or graphics work, but after being pulled from old crypto mining rigs, it still manages to handle basic tasks like typing documents or web browsing just fine. You can even throw it into a custom mini case like this when it looks clean, compact, and honestly kind of stylish for what it is. But if your goal is gaming, I'd say just stay far, far away. It's weak, super limited when it comes to upgrades, and not built for that life at all. Anyway, thanks a ton for watching. If you enjoyed this little experiment, don't forget to hit that hype button to help the video reach more people. See you in the next one. Peace out.